All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us. You know, we got a pretty big poker tournaments going on right now at the Rio. It is the World Series of Poker. Back in 2003, this man who we have on the line with us right now won a satellite for $39. He ended up winning the World Series of Poker. It was called the Moneymaker effect, and many say at the age of 27, he was responsible for that big poker boom, and now he has a shot to be in the Poker Hall of Fame. Chris Moneymaker joining us right now on the line. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. How's it going?
Doing good. My understanding is you're in the middle of a tournament right now, so we don't want to hold you too long. How are you doing? Can you give us an update?
Yeah, I'm just on dinner break right now. We're actually taking it right back off as we speak. I'm sitting about 50,000 in chips, starting from 30,000. Just day one of the event. So
Cool.
Not too bad.
Hold and study.
Not too bad at all. So what's your first reaction when you see that you're on the list of the finalists, 10 finalists, among other names, Mike Matusow, David Oppenheim, Eli Elezra, Antonio Esfandiari, Ted Forrest, to name a few, to be inducted possibly into the Poker Hall of Fame? What's your reaction to that?
I don't really have one, to be honest. It's not something I really think about. So never been much on rewards or Hall of Fame type stuff. I don't even know why we have a Poker Hall of Fame, to be honest.
Really? You really feel that way? Because I mean, you're known as a poker pioneer. I mean, I'm sure you're sick of hearing it, but the Moneymaker effect, right? I mean, a lot of people say that you're responsible for that big craze, that big boom in poker in 2003.
No, I mean, I love it. I love having fans, and I love having, the notoriety and the effect, and that's not going to go away. Whether I'm in the Poker Hall of Fame or not, it's not going to affect that. That's not going to change anything. I mean, I honestly couldn't tell you a single person in the Poker Hall of Fame, except for maybe Daniel Negreanu, Doyle Brunson, just because I know that they probably got inducted in the last couple of years. So, you know
what's interesting about you, Chris, is that when people talk to you about poker, you've never really claimed to be a poker professional, right? You don't have an ego. Yet you talk to a lot of these other people that maybe win one tournament, and they say the opposite. Why is it that you're so modest and that you've never really considered yourself a quote-unquote poker pro?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm just myself. I mean, I like being at home with my family. I travel around. I like playing smaller tournaments. They're more fun. Being a poker pro is a stressful life. I mean, I already travel around enough and play sponsored by PokerStars and then doing all these other small events and trying to grow the game. And I just like being around people that are starting out in the game and relatively new, and it's always just been a lot of fun for me. I mean, poker is supposed to be fun, and you get into some of these bigger games, it's just not a whole lot of fun just sitting there the whole time, no one talking.
I completely agree with you, by the way, on that. Speaking of, you mentioned you've been sponsored by PokerStars. I want to talk to you a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on this in regards to Chris Jesus Ferguson, because he happens to be on this Poker Hall of Fame finalist list with you. A lot of people say that Chris Ferguson should not be on this list, considering what went down with Full Tilt, what he took responsibility for. Do you have an opinion on that? Do you think that Ferguson should be on this list?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Phil Hunt's in the Hall of Fame. If he is, I mean, he did some bad things potentially at Ultimate Bet. So, I mean, are you going to have scandals keep people out of quote unquote Hall of Fame? I don't know. I don't know.
Call it the Pete Rose effect of poker.
What's that?
They call it the Pete Rose effect of poker.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know what his involvement was as far as knowing what he knew and what he didn't know. Obviously, Full Tilt was a huge disaster and huge fiasco. But, it's like me. I mean, I don't know. There probably weren't like me. I know Chris was, more in the ownership phase than I am. I'm just a sponsored pro. So if something were to happen with PokerStars, I mean, obviously that would stink really bad, but I wouldn't know anything about it. But I have a feeling that Chris probably knew a ton more about the company than I did.
Right.
But that being said, I mean, I just don't know all the facts. And it's hard to make a judgment when you don't know everything.
Yeah, I understand that. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with 2003 World Series of Poker champion Chris Moneymaker. Okay, Chris, so there's plenty, I shouldn't say plenty, but there are guys who have won the main event in the World Series of Poker who are now completely broke. From what I've heard, you're not one of them. You're smart with your money. You've been extremely intelligent. You haven't played in games that are over your head. What do you think that says about poker, though, that there are so many guys out there that are labeled as professional players and world-class players that are so bad with money and get dabble in sports betting and other types of betting?
Well, I mean, I sports bet. I do other things too. To be a really good poker player, you got to have just a different mindset, and you have to be willing to go for it. And take chances. You also have to be disciplined, and some of the greatest players out there have more gamble than they do discipline. And but poker's always been a game of, especially when you're in tournament poker. I mean, what people don't realize about tournament poker is you're only going to cash 15% of the time on average. 85% of the time you're going home broke.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to be a tournament poker player and you're going to grind this thing, unless you have backers or unless you have something, it doesn't matter really how good you are. Eventually you're going to run into financial troubles. You're going to need some help. You're going to need, that's why there's so much loaning and staking and backing and everything else in the poker world.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to reduce that variance and to give people chances to stay in action, essentially.
I know you're in the middle of a tournament here, so just a couple more quick questions, and we'll let you go. We're joined by Chris Moneymaker. Okay, so going back again to 2003, you're just an regular working day guy. How are you able to handle the fact that you are arguably one of the most, if not the most, recognizable guy in poker almost overnight? How are you able to handle that?
It was definitely different at first. I mean, it was tough to get used to, especially since I didn't like public speaking. Couldn't really do interviews without getting really nervous. I guess the good thing for me, and it's always been this way, is if I want to kind of be noticed and get out into the fans and be around people that know who I am, I come to a casino or I come to, a poker event or things of that nature. And if I want to sort of be incognito, I can just go with my own normal life because on average, most people don't recognize me. I've got a very, average face. I don't stand out. People always come up to me like, I know you from somewhere. They can't place it. I think someone like Daniel and Phil Hellmuth and Doyle and all these guys, they're a little bit more, their characteristics and their personality, I guess, stick out more, where I'm sort of just, that was sort of the whole appeal to the Moneymaker effect. I'm just like everybody else. I sort of just blend in. And, I've met so many people that tell me that they're my doppelganger in their home game because they look like me.
That's great. What is the most money you've won or lost? Forget about 2003 in the main event. We know how much money you won there. Can you share with us your biggest loss and your biggest win in a cash game in your life?
Biggest win in a cash game was $110,000. Biggest loss was $30,000.
Also, well, there you go. There you go. Do you still talk to Sammy Farha? You guys still talk on occasion?
We have never talked ever.
Really?
We had a heads-up match a couple of years later, and we spoke that night. And we did a charity event up in New York one night. And those are the two occasions that we've had a chance to engage. And outside of that, I've never talked to him.
Why do you think that is? I mean, because is it just his personality? Because you seem like a very approachable, nice guy. I mean, that surprises me a little bit.
Well, I mean, you see Sammy, you see me. Do you think we're going to have a lot of common interests? Do you think we're just going to
That's true.
And hang out? I don't think he's a bad guy. It's just, we're kind of a little bit different.
Yeah, you're different. That's true. Who is if you had to sit across a poker player, the guy that you don't want to sit across from, your least favorite player to play with, and maybe your favorite player to play against?
Eric Slidell, he's always fun, or always a terror to play with. He's always given me a world of trouble. He's been tough on me for years. I don't want to see Eric Slidell at my table. Mm-hmm. Just, super competitive. And as far as who I've won, honestly, everybody that I play with all the time, it's a bunch of fun people, more friends than anything else. Because again, I think poker's about having fun. Mm-hmm. I remember back in the day playing with Mike Matusow, and some of these guys used to crack up all the time. I don't know how much Mike cracks up at the table anymore, but used to be hilarious at the table.
Yeah.
So, there were a lot of characters back in the day. And so it was fun just playing with people that were engaging at the table and cracking jokes, talking about whatever sport was on TV. And, so.
Well, Chris, listen, man, we want to let you get back to the tables, but I know you're a modest guy. Maybe you don't think you deserve to be in the Poker Hall of Fame, but certainly I do. I think what you did in 2003 gave a lot of people a lot of hope, and you were a huge part of the big poker craze. So we wish you luck. I hope you get elected in, and I think eventually one day you will be in if it's not this year. But we'll let you get back to the tables, my friend. Good luck to you, and congratulations on your success.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, you too. There you go. Chris Moneymaker. What better last name for a poker player than Moneymaker, by the way? Can you find a better name than that?
I want to go into the Crazy Eights Hall of Fame when they do it. Or do they have a Pie-Gow Hall of Fame yet? Is it a Pie-Gow or Rummy? Rummy Hall of Fame?
Go Fish.
The Go Fish Hall of Fame. If we can get that.
I'm also pretty talented at Uno.
Uno's pretty tough, man. Uno's not easy.
Yeah, it's like the chess of cards.
I tried to get in the Yahtzee Hall of Fame, and it was, oh man, let me tell you, they have such a high level of scrutiny.
It's also
so
a high.
tough.
It's also a high fee. That's a real racket. No, hit you for 50 or 60 grand.
It's easier to get a star on the Walk of Fame.
Let me be
to keep a star.
As your favorite, as Ron's favorite guy, Barack Obama would say. Let me be clear. Okay, let me be clear on this one. All right. To me, poker is completely. Go ahead, keep going.
Poker on radio is very exciting.
That's not what I was going to say.
You were going to say overrated.
Yes, I was going to say that. Poker is extremely overrated. Here's why.
Okay? I never overrated.
Well, I think it's completely overrated. First of all, Moneymaker's a good dude. And he doesn't have an ego. And many of those poker players who have won bracelets have huge egos. You ask Chris Moneymaker.
You win a bracelet?
Yeah. Chris Moneymaker said.
A bracelet. See, there's at least in Crazy Eight.
I can't get through a story.
Ron thinks it should be a moose head, a stuffed moose head. From a musket from 1873.
Okay. Jeez. Why not hollow point bullets? It's poker, man. Aces,
you know what? I'll tell you one thing about
Let
Chris
me know
Moneymaker.
when I can finish my statement.
Chris Moneymaker wanted to finish that tournament. He wanted to get back to that tournament really bad.
Thank goodness.
Let me tell you something.
I wanted him to get back. We're talking poker on the radio. I wanted him to get back in this tournament. Okay,
Ron has about 1,000 stories to tell, and he is a great storyteller. But for the great storyteller that Ron is, for the life of me, I can't get through a story without Ron interrupting me. But that's okay.
Go ahead.
That's fine. Ron, you know I love you anyway.
Mike is off. Mike is off.
No. Don't turn the mic off, Ron. Okay. We don't want that to happen. No, but I think there's bad players, average players, and good players. And I think if you are a moderate to good player, you can win the main event of the World Series of Poker. I think Chris Moneymaker is a perfect example of that. Don't think he's a bad player. Don't think he's a great player. He's got moderate poker skills. He obviously hasn't won much of anything since the World Series of Poker. In all due respect to him, he'd admit this. He won a World Poker Tour event, so that was nice. 7 figures there, but he doesn't have an ego. But when you see a lot of these guys that win the main event, most of the time, you don't hear from these guys again. They don't win anything else again. And I think there's a reason for that because, like I said, poker is extremely overrated. And I think poker pro Dan Harrington said it best. He said, when I play in the main event of the World Series of Poker, and, we got 7,000 or 8,000 guys in the main event now, I just have a few extra lotto tickets than everybody else. Now, look, I'm talking about winning the tournament.
Necklace, and he has a necklace.
And he has that too,
right? A necklace, right? Right. Is it a necklace or okay, ankle bracelet?
But it's amazing to me that Moneymaker doesn't think. I was kind of surprised to hear him say he doesn't think he's worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. I actually think he is.
I think what he was kind of saying was I think it's kind of a joke that there is a Poker Hall of Fame. I think he thinks it's a joke. I'll be honest, man. When I was 17 years old, I started watching ESPN. And I watched Chris Moneymaker win that, and that actually that piqued my interest in poker because of the simple fact that he was just a standard guy who got in a tournament. And what did he win? $5 million? How much money did he win? Do you know?
I don't remember exactly how much money it was. No, it was a lot.
It was a lot of money.
7 figures.
And that's what ESPN
and an earring.
Norman Chad.
And he got an earring.
He definitely got an earring, a pink one.
Well, look,
which is great.
The fact that he's this 27-year-old kid that spent $39 to get into the main event, and look, there weren't a lot of players at Binion's back then. Maybe 700-800 in the main event. It wasn't a lot, and this was back when it was at Binion's. The fact that he was able to, it was a great story, and I think he was a huge part of the buzz. That's why they call it the Moneymaker effect. And look, he knows that. But with that being said, it's amazing how many people are entering the World Series of Poker. And this has been going on now for, a month? I think the WSOP is, 7 or 8 weeks or something like that? Maybe 6 weeks? It's crazy how much is going. We got $50,000 tournaments. We've got $1 million one-drop tournament, right? I don't even know if they're doing that this year. But it's crazy what the World Series of Poker has turned into. When you go into the Rio, the entire convention area is all poker tables. There's 4 or 5 different rooms in there. It's nuts. It's crazy. Back when Chris Moneymaker won the WSOP in 2003 at Binion's, there was one tiny little room in there, and that was it. And it's amazing what Binion's has turned into now because you're lucky if they even have 1 or 2 games going now in that place. It's sort of dead. The hotel rooms don't even exist at Binion's. They have a great steakhouse there, but it's amazing what poker has progressed into these days. But I agree with Chris Moneymaker with what he said. Poker these days is boring. It's boring. Nobody's really talking at the table. There's not a lot of chit-chat. Part of that is the people that run the World Series of Poker. They have these stupid rules in place. Look, you shouldn't be allowed to swear at somebody. You shouldn't be allowed to threaten somebody. But there should be allowed a little bit of trash talk at the table. It is a mental game. And I hate to compare poker to sports because it's not a sport, but mentally it's similar to sports. You look at the best in basketball, football, baseball, hockey. They're all trash talkers, right? mental. They try to get that mental edge on top of the talent that they have. To me, poker is no different, only more important in poker because it's such a mental game. You're trying to get people off their game. You're trying to get people to make bad decisions. And a part of doing that is putting people on what they say in poker, putting them on tilt, right? And if you make fun of someone's shirt, for example, or the way they play, if that's enough to bother somebody and get them off their game, then they shouldn't be playing poker in the first place. But what the World Series of Poker is trying to do is they're trying to limit table talk. And because of that, poker ratings have gone down the tubes. Nobody's
what?
It has.
Can we next week talk Yahtzee strategy? Seriously, I mean, if you got 4 aces, and so you get 4 ones and a 6, would you take your 10 points on your 4 of a kind?
I have no idea.
It on your 4 8, or would you try to roll that 6 to get the Yahtzee to get the full?
I always
5 points.
I always
what would
go.
you do?
I go for the 35. I go for the 35. I play it safe.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
No Yahtzee strategy. Let's do.
I go for the 35 every time.
See, no,
I think that people are starting to realize that there's only so many cards you can have in poker. There's only so many hands.
And here's a strategy.
And there is a lot of luck involved.
I've got a strategy.
It's really not that fun.
You ready for my strategy?
To watch a hand unless there's something that's keeping you watching.
Guys.
And that's why a female needs to win the World Series of Poker this year.
By the way, I agree okay, here's my strategy for Ron Futrell. Ready for this? Ron's going to want to listen to this. Regardless of whether the president of the United States is a Republican or a Democrat, when somebody does something that is disgraceful or embarrassing, and has nothing to do with policy, it has everything to do with character, instead of responding by saying, it's not the way I would handle it, respond by saying, guess what? He was wrong, like JD said. Why is it that, switching topics here,
are we switching topics?
Why is it?
I was right in the middle of the Yahtzee strategy, and I was moving into crazy
I want to
eights
pick your brain.
And rummy, and we were going to talk that strategy of those cards. Oh, great card.
We're already losing our listeners. Why is it that you can't just look me in the eye and say the president is wrong?
I'm not going to say what you want me to say.
I'm not.
Yes,
you can't admit when the president makes a mistake.
I absolutely have, and I have plenty of times.
Give me one example where you said the president was wrong.
Listen, I'm old enough that I don't have a memory anymore, but I've plenty of times said he's made a mistake. I've used the analogy that he has horrible bedside manners. He has horrible bedside manners. I didn't hire him to be my doctor.
Horrible bedside manners.
He's not my doctor.
No, come on.
No, he has horrible bedside manners, as did Patton during World War II, but we hired Patton to kill the Nazis, and that's
if I bring a sandwich into bed, okay? If I bring a sandwich into bed, that's horrible bedside manners.
No.
When you say she's not my type when you're accused of rape, that's not horrible bedside manners. That's being a scumbag. Why can't you admit that?
Let me explain it. No, it's horrible bedside manners.
No, it's not.
Here's my point. I've said it before. I've gotten the Patton. You get the Patton story again. During World War II, North Africa, he's touring through all the hospital beds. He's seeing people with legs blown off and faces blown off and all sorts of things. He sees a guy sitting there on the bed. Patton does. George S. Patton. They did the movie about him. He took care of Hitler and the Nazis. And he sees some guy that's got PTSD and it has no visible injuries, and he slaps him across the face and get out of the battlefield, son, and something to that effect. And people said, wow, that's horrible of Patton to do that. We hired Patton not because of his bedside manners.
What does this have to do with?
Oh, it has everything to do with it. If you could figure this out, it has everything to do with it. Trump did not win the presidency because of his bedside manners, lack thereof, bedside manners. He won the presidency because
talking about
people
how
wanted
he won
him to fix the country.
I'm not talking about how he won the presidency. I'm talking about a specific comment that he made.
Do not expect him to have bedside manners. Do not expect Trump to have bedside manners. You'll be sadly disappointed, Brian.
So let me ask you a question.
Disappointed every week, and that's all you talk about
let
is
me
his
ask you a
bedside
question.
manners. I don't care about his bedside manners. I wish they were better.
It's unfortunate you don't care.
I wish they were better. I wish you were like a pastor. I wish you were a preacher or a bishop or a priest or something. Go through that. I wish
so let me
you were
ask
that,
you a question.
But he's not.
Can I ask you a question,
Patton
please?
was hired to kill the Nazis and take care of Hitler. That he did.
If you saw a man on the street, God forbid, comment on your daughter, for example, your daughter's looks, called her pig face, called her fat, God forbid. If something like that happened and your daughter came, let's just say when she was younger, crying to you, would your response to her be, I'm sorry he has bad bedside manners?
I'd kick him in the teeth. Okay. How's that? I'd kick him in the teeth.
Bad bedside manners? So you wouldn't respond by bad bedside manners if it was personal to you?
I would kick him in the teeth.
So if it's personal, okay, fine. So let's go with this.
It's not personal to me.
So hold on, So if it's personal to you and somebody makes fun of one of your friends or a member of your family, you'll kick them in the teeth. But if it's not personal to you, hold on.
Take out any
but if it's not somebody personal to you, and he's the president of the United States, your response is, well, bad bedside manners. I would have handled it differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's ridiculous.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
That's ridiculous. Why can't you be consistent?
I would have a visceral response to somebody that attacked me personally. I don't take politics personal. I don't take it personal. I don't have
when the president of the United States attacks somebody personally,
Brian,
we all should take it personally.
Here's where you're missing this, is I don't have high expectations of politicians. All of a sudden, you have high expectations of one side. You don't have high expectations of the other. You have high expectations of the Trump children, but not of the Biden children. Oh, no. Let's talk about how...
I'm not voting for Joe Biden. What are you talking about?
Spend enough time talking about... Oh, you can still talk about him. You do a talk show.
I don't support Joe Biden.
I didn't say you...
I don't know anything about his kids.
I didn't say you...
I know one of his kids died several years ago. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, we could.
Do you want to talk about how he said he wanted to cure cancer and then Trump Jr. decided to attack him for saying that? Do you don't think there's anything wrong with it? You want to talk about kids? Let's talk about kids.
You've already talked about Hunter Biden, who's still living.
Joe Biden's
who took millions of dollars from the Chinese and the Ukrainians.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, you don't?
And Joe Biden is not the president of the United States. Joe Biden is not the president of the United States.
And
you know what? Joe Biden. You know what Joe Biden wouldn't do? I'll tell you what Joe Biden wouldn't do. Do you want to hear what Joe Biden wouldn't do? He wouldn't put a couple members of his family in a cabinet if they were unqualified, like the disgrace of our president has done.
He took care of his son pretty well. Oh no, he took care of him.
Didn't say he didn't take care of him.
He wouldn't take care of him. He let his son.
He wouldn't be the Secretary of State.
You got to check that out, Brian. You got to do yourself a favor.
Okay, well, here's what I want you to check out. Since you're talking about kids, here's what I do want to bring up now, and we'll take some calls at 257-5396 on this one. Okay, one of Joe Biden's sons.
Crazy Eight's Hall of Fame. Then we'll talk about that later? Okay, anyway.
I'm just starting another story. One of Joe Biden's kids passed away several years ago of cancer.
Bo.
Okay, Bo.
That was Bo. His name was Bo.
Yes. And Joe Biden, who I respect him, but I'm probably not going to vote for him. We'll get to that later. Joe Biden said, we're going to cure cancer. Now, obviously, when he makes a statement like that, it's very personal to him, as it's personal to many of us. Cancer has touched a lot of lives. Right. So what does that mean to any logical person when he says, I want to cure cancer? I'll tell you what it means. And you would agree with this, I would hope. He wants to do everything in his power to conquer this horrible disease, obviously, right? That's why he made a statement like that. And then Don Jr., being the buffoon that he is, attacks Joe Biden and says, what has Joe Biden done to cure cancer in 40 years?
Well, what has he done?
You don't think Joe Biden has wanted to cure disease and cancer?
What has he done? Well, he said done. He didn't say want to.
And that's a valid point.
What has he done?
He's had every opportunity to spearhead a cancer campaign, and he has. And the fact that he's choosing to now when he's trying to become president of the United States is kind of an insult if you really look at it.
What proof do you have that he hasn't done anything at all? That he hasn't? You don't think he's wanted to cure cancer? Do you really want to make that statement?
Wanting to do something and doing something, Brian, two pretty big different things.
So you're okay with Don Jr. attacking him for that statement?
And let's be honest, man. How many people are employed right now because of cancer? I mean, it's a huge, huge industry.
Well, I agree with that.
Especially in the United States.
I feel that way about every disease.
What a great controversial this is for Biden to say that he wants to cure cancer. Isn't that wow? That's quite a stance.
Should we fault him for that? For saying that?
We all want that, Brian. Everybody in the planet
wants
that.
Don Jr. is the one that's attacking him for saying that.
Except for the drug companies. You make a very good point, though.
Exactly.
You make a very good point. Except for the drug companies.
So Don Jr. So I guess Don Jr. has bad bedside manners, just like his father. I understand.
The question, what has he done?
Bad bedside manners.
What has he done? Do you know the answer to that?
Bad bedside manners.
Do you know the answer? What
Every time you criticize a Democrat, I'm just going to respond by saying bad bedside manners. That's what I'm going to say. No, Ron, that's what I'm going to do.
I don't talk about that. I talk about policies. I talk policies.
Right.
I talk policies. That's what I talk about.
How's that Mexico going to pay for it wall working out for you? How's that working out?
They're fixing things down there, aren't they?
They paid for the wall, right? How's that working out? How about transgenders?
Stay tuned, Brian.
How about transgenders not allowed to serve in the military? How's that working out? Is that a good policy? You want to talk about that policy?
Not my
How about
policy.
tax breaks for the top 1%? You want to talk about that policy?
Tax breaks have worked for you and everybody else in this country.
Let's brag about.
Wow.
Let's
how's
brag
the economy working,
Let's
Brian?
brag about the unemployment numbers, but the majority of those people living paycheck to paycheck. You want to brag about that too?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, let's brag about that.
Yes.
Yeah, because people making $10 an hour is really something to brag about.
What don't you like about minority unemployment being down?
Right, well,
Brian,
we got to take some calls.
Why do you not like unemployment being down?
We have to take some calls.
How do you not like that? How do you stand
We
on
have
that?
to. Okay, I got to give out the number. Let's take a deep breath.
Jim Rummy Hall of Fame. I'm on my way, baby.
Do you want you give out the number?
I don't know it.
Oh, so let me
look
do
it up. It's on my phone.
Let's let JD do it.
Hold on.
Go ahead, JD.
702-257-5396.
Oh, good. I like it when he gives out the number. It gives me a chance to take a break there.
Again,
I like
that really felt good.
Do it again. You got to give it out twice if Ron will allow you to.
They all know the number.
The number again is 257-5396. If you do want to be a part of the conversation, let's go to Dave. Dave, what's going on?
Hey, Dave.
Big token. Stop it.
Excuse me, what? Hello, Dave? You waited on hold for 10 minutes, and I have no idea what you just said. Would you like to repeat yourself, Dave?
Yeah, we lost him.
That was an interesting.
I thought he said Dave Koken.
I don't know what that was.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
Either.
I don't know who just made.
I'm not sure what's going on.
I don't know what that was. But
I'm
we're
very
talking.
confused.
Hey, listen, we're talking about a serious subject. This is a serious,
The Yahtzee Hall of Fame?
subject. No, not the Yahtzee Hall of
Okay.
Fame. We've lost all of our listeners because of bringing that up. So
Hungry
we've run-
hippos.
We talked.
Shoots and ladders.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. I want to take
Candyland.
I want to take a quick break, and when we come back, boy, this is an interesting story. Andre Iguodala not making the franchise of the Golden State Warriors look really good, and guess what? His comments have something to do with Kevin Durant. I'll explain when we get back.
What?
You're listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN.